The maternal wound, how parentification sabotages children. So you guys have been asking me for some time now to do an analysis talking a little bit about jealous mothers and how they treat their daughters, obviously that they're jealous of, that they're envious of. And I've been promising you guys that I was going to get to it. And finally, the time has come. The reason why I waited is because I wanted this analysis to be thought-provoking and for it not to be regurgitating some of the points that I've already made on my channel, obviously by pulling from certain excerpts and examples in the book Green Eyes. But today, I want to address implicit instances of sabotage, specifically when we think about the maternal wound, the maternal figure. And since I've been dissecting like romantic taboos lately, and that's going to be our focal point for the next, couple of analyses, I want to address how the maternal wound, it can hinder specifically young women's relationships, whether it be platonic, whether it be professional, whether it be romantic. And it also runs relatively prevalent in a romantic aspect. And the way that the mother will implicitly sabotage her daughter is through parentification. So I wanted to make this analysis today to address the implicit. A lot of the time, people are battling with maternal consequences, and they haven't acknowledged the fact that the parentification is actually a form of jealousy and envy in their maternal figure trying to sabotage them. And maternal figure can expand from obviously your mother, but it could be an aunt, it can be a grandparent, it can be, an older woman in your life. For a lot of you all, you guys have experienced this in church settings and spiritual settings. It could be sports, it could be a mentor. And this is also addressed in the book Green Eyes as well, the malicious mentor. But for the past few months, I think probably a year now, I've been addressing more explicit signs and examples of someone being jealous or envious of you. However, when it comes to parental and child relationships, it's a little bit more complex. So as I stated just now, I want to address implicit things that are happening and why sometimes it can be difficult to pinpoint this toxic cycle that's happening in your relationships, in your partnerships, in your professional endeavors, and you not being able to understand why it's happening, especially if you're putting your best foot forward. Be mindful. Go back to the drawing board and ask yourself, who is connected to you and what kind of counsel are they giving you? Sometimes it may not even be counsel, but it may be someone trying to monopolize your time. Another way that this can happen is by the parent, specifically the maternal figure, implanting fear in the child. And some people may ask, well, why would they feel the need to implant fear in their children? Well, this is actually a strategy to keep the child underneath their thumb, to keep them under their control. So what they will do is they will project their negative perspectives, their negative experiences onto their child, and the child will internalize it as the parent protecting them, not realizing that in a backhanded manner, their parent is actually sabotaging them. So parentification is a deep-rooted wound, and this is why a lot of people have a difficult time putting a label to those toxic cycles that they're experiencing. And it's because, it's masked under the guise of concern and care, but you're not realizing that your parent is passing the emotional buck onto you. There are certain things that, in order for you to evolve and to establish your own life, to establish your own relationships, it's going to be very difficult for you to do so if you're bogged down by one of your parents or both of your parents' emotional baggage. Another thing that I want to address is the fact that, in the background, I obviously am referencing a particular film as, one of the muses for the analysis today. And I was studying this film, like certain clips of it for like the past couple of months. So this was definitely a long time coming. And I knew I wanted to connect it with the request that you guys have been putting in the comment section for a video about how to deal with a jealous mother. And what was very interesting as I was studying clips of this specific film, that, what was interesting as far as what I observed is the fact that the mother definitely presented as if she had a deep care for her daughter. And her daughter, as a result, had unwavering loyalty to her mother. And her mother had a bad habit of making horrible decisions. And obviously, she ended up incarcerated as a byproduct. And that's a conversation for a whole other day, as far as the mother putting so much of her confidence and her hope into her romantic partnership. So the moment that she felt betrayed by her romantic partner, she literally went ballistic, and it led to her being incarcerated. See, this is why it's so important to address certain wounds within yourself so that you do not try to put that emotional baggage onto others, especially in a romantic capacity, because realistically, your partner cannot be your parent. This is also dissected in detail in the book All Strings Attached, The Queen's Quarrel. But to stay on topic for the analysis today, as I was just now stating, I was studying certain clips of this specific film, and I realized that the daughter's unwavering loyalty to her mother, now there's nothing wrong with it, because I do believe that in a very toxic way, for lack of better words, the mom really did love her daughter. But because the mother was so blinded by her own wounds and her own experiences, it kind of took away from the much needed attention that needed to be dedicated to child rearing. And, whether we want to, address this or not, as I stated, for our upcoming analyses, I'm going to be ripping the Band-Aid. So we're going to be talking about things that are uncomfortable. We're going to be naming things, putting labels to things, and calling out things that may make us feel a little uncomfortable. But before you become a parent yourself, you have to understand that you no longer have the luxury once the child is here to put your feelings and your emotions at the forefront, because now you have another life to protect. So as I stated before, as I was observing certain clips in the film, I realized that the mother may have had, a love and a concern for her daughter, but because she was still putting her feelings and her experiences at the forefront, it put her daughter in a compromising predicament. So there was a domino effect. Her acting out in an irrational and emotional manner led to incarceration, and now her daughter had to, be in the care of individuals that she was not familiar with. Now, what was very interesting is the daughter had some negative experiences, but she also had positive experiences with other maternal figures. And the moment that the mother found out about the positive experiences, that's where she started to sabotage her daughter. So this is where the parentification toxicity kicks in. When you are putting yourself in a predicament to where you can no longer be present for your child because you're always putting your feelings and your emotions at the forefront, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So now that you're not able to fulfill that maternal responsibility, you cannot sabotage the other person, who is able and who is willing to be present for your daughter in a maternal manner. You can't have your cake and eat it too and sabotage that as well, knowing that you already put yourself in a predicament to where you can't show up for your daughter in your fullest capacity. But if you don't get your emotions in check, you will sabotage relationships for your daughter out of jealousy, out of envy, out of being territorial, and it actually sabotages your daughter in the process and puts her in harm's way emotionally, mentally, and even physically. But another thing that I want to highlight after studying this film was the fact that it took the daughter entering her own romantic relationship, her own romantic partnership, to start to evolve and develop an identity. Now, the interesting thing about it is, if you are dealing with the parental wound and you find yourself encountering another maternal or paternal figure, but for this video, we're going to stay focused on the maternal. So specifically, if you have a maternal wound and you find yourself coming across a maternal figure, you have to be careful, because sometimes you will idolize that person and you will place a lot of expectations on them, and they have limitations themselves. Now, what's interesting and where it can work out to your benefit, as depicted in the film, is sometimes your romantic partnership can kind of lead by example. It will be your opportunity and your outlet to establish your own identity. So that's why romance it's very important. This is why I stated in my previous analysis, when I was talking a little bit about like hetero hate, misogyny, and misandry, the reason why it's so important to address the parental wound is because if you're not careful, you will sabotage opportunities that can help you actually break that toxic cycle. So nevertheless, in the film, what was depicted is once the daughter actually entered into her own romantic partnership, that's where she was able to establish a sense of individuality and think for herself, identify who it was that she planned to be, how she wanted to present herself to the world, have her own values and belief systems and things like that, which is very important once you start to establish yourself as an individual, as you start to develop your own relationships. It's very important for you to know what it is that you want and how you want to show up in those relationships, and also what you would like to see in return. But I want to warn people of this. There is also a little bit of territoriality, possessiveness, jealousy, and envy that can present itself with the maternal figure once you start to develop your own romantic relationships. So you have to be mindful of allowing the two to enmesh themselves. Understand this. The maternal figure has had her opportunity at love, okay? So now it's your time to explore and to establish your own romantic relationships. And if you want to break certain cycles, you have to be intentional about it. And in order to implement that intentionality, you have to know how to deprogram and detach from counterproductive cycles and habits. To describe this in detail, I'm going to read from an excerpt in the book, All Strings Attached, The Queen's Quarrel. The Queen's Quarrel. A parental wound that many women may face in a romantic context is the wounded mother. Subconsciously, you observe this void and develop a resentment or a distrust of the opposite gender. Such wounds become even more intense when the mother uses her children to compensate for the paternal void. Such compensation includes parentification. Examples given: assigning children adult responsibilities and emotional labor. Examples given: confiding in children about romantic resentments or blaming children. Although it is normal for humans to say hurtful things in the heat of the moment and feel a sense of remorse after, it does not negate the fact children absorb these verbal and emotional wounds like a sponge. In the context of a queen's quarrel, young women observing their mother's romantic wounds can condition women to believe healthy romantic partnerships are a fantasy or romantic lovers cannot be trusted. So in sum, be able to discern whether or not the emotional baggage that you've been dealing with is that of your own or is that of another. You can love someone and support someone without taking on their baggage. And understand that emotional baggage that is not your own is also not your weight to carry. All right, babes, that's all that I have for this analysis today. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. But of course, I want to hear you all's comments, opinions, perspectives, as well as your personal experiences in the comment section below. I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next analysis, babes. Take care.